My name is Ali, I'm a doctor and YouTuber,
I'm Taimur, I'm a data scientist and writer,
and you're listening to Not Overthinking.
the weekly podcast where we think about happiness, creativity, and the human condition.
Hello and welcome back to Not Overthinking. Taimur, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, thanks. I'll tell you a few things about my week. I've had a few good social interactions this week.
Oh, you have?
That I'm quite happy about.
All right.
And they're quite varied as well, so it was really nice. So I had a 3-person dinner a few days ago. It was like Thursday or something. Yeah, on Thursday, 3-person dinner. Kind of intimate sort of dinner with a couple of lads where, yeah, I feel like we're all really connected and bonded. And I think the 3-person dynamic was actually really good for that because, yeah, I think if there were 4 people, it would have been slightly different. I think one of the main differences in group sizes, especially in groups of guys, is that the more people there are, the more there's a tendency for it to become this kind of
banter or one-upmanship
yeah,
contest.
banter one-upmanship contest. It's
Absolutely,
the taking the piss out of each other kind of contest, which look, I love. It's so much fun. It's like really fun. But it's definitely a different kind of dynamic. So like when there's 3 people, for example, there is a bit of like taking the piss out of each other, but it would be out of place for it to be like a constant thing, you know? Whereas when there's like a bigger group of people, like a big part of the value in it is just like the sort of taking the piss out of each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Where like almost every other sentence is met with some sort of quip from someone
Yeah.
else. And there are enough people in the group that it kind of spreads out.
Yeah, and it's amazing. So I think the 3-person dynamic was good. It is sort of really intimate, and I think we all had a really nice time, and it would have definitely been a different kind of vibe if there were more people. So that was one.
Sounds almost like an inner ring.
No. The other one was last night. I went to the theatre.
You went to the theatre?
Yeah.
As in like the West End theatre?
It was in Chelsea, so I don't know if that counts as West End.
That's so cultured.
Yeah, mate. And it was like it was a play about I guess sort of racial and sort of class identities in the UK. It was really good. Really kind of intense, emotional kind of play, and it was really good. And I was with a group of about 8 or 9 people. Only maybe like 2 or 3 of whom I knew before, and the rest I hadn't met before. And then after the theatre, we all got dessert, we got ice cream, and then we just like hung out for like, I don't know, 3 hours or something at this ice cream place. Yeah,
like 8, 9 people.
Yeah, 1 or 2 people kind of they didn't make it, but then they left. But yeah, it was just great vibes. I think if it had just been a dinner, it would have been different because like I don't know what the experience was like for the other people, but I didn't know most of them. And so having like the theatre beforehand as the kind of shared activity to bring you together and to kind of get everyone into some kind of shared headspace, and then the dessert afterwards kind of meant that. Well, whereas if it was just like dinner with 10 people and a bunch of them didn't know,
it feels somewhat formal then.
Yeah, I feel
you're sort of stuck talking to the people in your immediate vicinity.
Yeah. And okay, so I think the theatre beforehand was really good. I think I've advocated for doing an activity and then doing a meal in social gathering. I think I've advocated for that before. The other nice thing was, it was a similar kind. After a while, it was a similar kind of group vibe. So I think here's how it plays out, and I've seen a similar pattern play out in groups in general, where at the start it's like everyone talking in their own little groups. Like you talk to the person opposite you, maybe there's 2 people next to you, and there's maybe like 3 of these little sort of groups going on. And then towards the end, it all kind of merges into one, and it's near the end, it sort of becomes a thing where it's like one person talking at a time, everyone else listening really intently, and then you kind of have like a discussion, and then like someone else talking at one time, and like everyone is in the same space, and like I don't know, there's just something really. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
There's something like really special about that when like you kind of go from like smaller subgroups to everyone coming together as one group, and you're all having the same discussion, and like it's just great vibes, man.
So I think that's why I love kind of after party after party chills
vibes.
So much.
That's exactly it.
Because like at dinner at sort of like some ball or some event or something, you're going to be chatting with the people immediately around you, and then everyone kind of goes together to the after party where it's a bit more laid back. You're chilling on the couch. The couches are brought together in such a way that there are about 10 people in the group, and it becomes like a sort of group conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So that was super nice. Look, this is really self-indulgent. I'm just going to talk about myself for a while. I was also quite happy because I think I've made progress in this area. So I think maybe like a year ago, if I was in a similar situation where, group of 10 people or something, most of whom I don't know, I think I would have felt a pressure to perform and a pressure to make the other people like me. Whereas this time, I just didn't care is the wrong word, because that almost seems like a negative thing, but I didn't feel any pressure to like perform or make the people like me. And so it was just so much more chill. Whereas previously, that same kind of setting would have been a lot more like intense and overthinky for me. So that was really nice. I think I just enjoyed it a lot more because I was just like chill. And I didn't care if I was like the funniest person on the table or like, you know, whatever, right?
So what you're saying is that the last 6 months of doing this podcast have helped you to not overthink.
Yeah, maybe. No, to be honest, I think it's just more like, it's just about iteration, you know, like it hasn't really, the podcast hasn't really helped here, but I think once you put yourself in this kind of situation, I don't know, like 5 times over the period of a month or two, then it's just like, you know, you notice things and then you actually do it again quickly enough for you to act on those things.
Oh, like a short feedback loop.
Yeah, it's like a shorter feedback loop. Whereas if it's, you know, for example, if someone struggles in like, I don't know, big group settings, like, I don't know, if someone struggles with like big party settings where there's lots of people and they do it like once a year because they're kind of reluctant to do it. Every time they do it, it's like, oh man, this is really uncomfortable. And then afterwards you'll have some thoughts and stuff, but the next time you do it won't be until like a year later. And so you won't really be able to make progress there. But I think like, yeah, I think just repetition's good.
Okay, so kind of on a similar note, I've had 2 social interactions of note this week as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's been an incredibly what's the word, like intense week from a social vibe. But so like on Wednesday evening, I was at a Christmas party type thing at one of the colleges at Cambridge where I do these supervisions, and like I was, you know, easily the youngest person there, the only non-white person there, but that, you know, that's like an irrelevant thing. And it kind of started off as this sort of jazz, sort of an hour of jazz performances where there was this quartet of like old men and one lady kind of playing various like instruments, you know, French horns, trombones. I think that's an instrument.
Probably.
Trumpet is a thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But they were all instruments from like the 1800s, and they were like, okay, so the instrument I'm now playing is, you know, a Stradivarius from 1846. Probably not a Stradivarius because he made violins or something.
Yeah.
And they would sort of chat a bit about their instruments and talk about the dynamics of the instrument and the timbre it creates, and then play a piece. So it was, you know, that kind of vibe. And then there was this like buffet dinner and things afterwards. And I thought that was really interesting because there were loads of different kind of groups of people who were all related to the college in some way. Most of them were fellows of the college or supervisors, which is why I got the invite. And when we kind of got the medic group together, like, you know, the supervisor doing the medicine stuff, like there was a huge age range. Like there was me at 25, then there was the other guy who was 30, a 35-year-old, and then sort of 50, and then like sort of a guy and a lady in their like 70s or like mid 70s. So it was like this huge breadth of experience. And that's an environment that I have almost never been in before, where sort of you're in this group of 5 people with such a wide age range, with such a wide kind of breadth of experience. And I did feel in a way that need to perform.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
And I felt like I wasn't adding much to the conversation because I felt like, you know, a big part of me was like, I don't have anything to contribute here.
Yeah.
And so at one point I did the classic thing of, you know, asking them for like careers advice, given that they were all, you know, several years ahead of me and could advise on that front. But the conversation itself wasn't anything particularly fancy. Like they were talking about music, they were talking about, you know, what instruments do you play, you know, what position in the choir do you sing in church on the weekend?
Sounds pretty fancy to me, mate.
And those were topics of conversation that I could have joined in on. Like one of the guys in the group was a tenor, and you know I'm very jealous of tenors because there's like male singers with a slightly higher voice, so you can sing pop songs. And had it been any other group, I would have chimed in with like, oh my god, I'm so jealous. But I felt that resistance, thinking that wouldn't be enough of a value add to that particular group. And so I was kind of thinking of this as the evening was going on, that like, why am I feeling this sense of I need to perform, this like lack of comfort. And then the following day I was at this other Christmas party with some people that like broadly I'd never met before, but I was like super comfortable there. Like it was like they were sort of my age plus or minus about 5 years, so kind of much closer. It was more of a sit down thing where you're sitting down over dinner and just kind of chatting, but I felt so comfortable and like I was able to kind of make jokes and things, and I was thinking that this is absolutely not the feeling that I had in this previous event. And so I've kind of been thinking this week, like I wonder what the actual difference is between those two. I wonder as well if there was an element of it whereby like most of the people at the second dinner were ethnic minorities to some degree. There was like one white guy there out of like a group of 6 or 7 sort of non-white people. Whereas in the other group, it was the other way around. And I wonder if that has subconsciously played a role in kind of my feelings of comfort about this.
That's interesting. I guess the age thing is there as well. Like if if like everyone's like super old.
But then I was thinking if the second dinner had been sort of with, you know, the white football lads in the same age group, I probably would have felt equally uncomfortable.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I don't know what it is. And this is something that I'm really trying to work through. I don't want to have this difference in comfort between talking to a white person and talking to a non-white person. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this is I mean, yeah, this kind of stuff is exactly what the play was about last night. And actually, so yeah, I think I know what you mean. And so like the group of people I was with last night after this play, where they're all sort of ethnic minorities of various sorts. I think there was one white person, but broadly like ethnic minorities. And yeah, I think there is a difference. And I think I don't know actually. I don't know where I stand on this. I feel like it's just people with similar backgrounds I feel more comfortable with. And that can be sort of similar along different dimensions, right? So if it's, if it's a group of like white people, but they all did maths or something.
Yeah, then you'd be
then it's like,
super comfortable.
This is my jam, you know?
They're your tribe, yeah.
My tribe. Or if it's like, a group of sort of, ethnic minorities and they didn't necessarily do maths, I'm probably more comfortable with them because we still have that thing in common. And, if they're older, if there's like a significant age difference, that kind of increases the I feel like it's just like differences kind of increase the discomfort in general. And a very obvious one that that you often find yourself in is like sort of the racial differences, groups of sort of white folk versus more mixed versus more minority.
I guess like race differences and age differences are the one that's immediately obvious.
Yeah.
Whereas sort of differences in background and differences in kind of hobbies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is not immediately apparent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably it.
But yeah, I agree. Like, I don't like that I have different levels of comfort in different groups. And I think it's just about iteration cycles, man. You got to go to like 5 more Christmas parties next week, and then you'll have cracked it. You'll have like understood what's going on.
Man, right. I need to get invited to 5 more Christmas parties next week.
Right. If anyone's throwing a Christmas party, if any white people.
Then do reach out. Hi, invitations at notoverthinking.com. We'll set up a separate inbox for that. If you want to invite us to low optionality social events.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Wait, no, I have a couple of more social things. Mate, this has been a cracking week for me. Okay. So for Monday to Wednesday of this week, I was actually in Berlin, in Germany.
Oh, how was that?
It was good. Lucas and I were there to meet one of our investors/advisors for a couple of days to kind of work with him on some stuff. That itself was interesting because I'd never really had that kind of, I don't know, I guess professionally I've like collaborated with people like Lucas, people my age where we're doing this thing. Here we were sort of collaborating with this sort of outside guy who's a bit older, but still like early 30s kind of thing.
What do you mean collaborating with? Like
we were saying, like, for example, like Lucas managed to hustle us a nice sort of conference room in some office building that like one of his family friends works in.
Okay.
And so Lucas and I and this advisor fellow just sitting in a conference room all day for 2 days.
And like just chatting or like sitting around the same computer screen?
Sitting around the computer screen, talking about, I won't go into the work details because it's really not that interesting for most people, but just kind of collaborating. So that itself was interesting. It was also interesting because this was the first time I'd really spent any amount of time with someone who is very strictly Jewish. And so this guy...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's not where I thought this was going.
This guy was like, keeps very strictly kosher. And I never really understood, I never really was aware of just how difficult and strict that is. So he actually like brought with him a bunch of essentially cereal bars and pot noodles so that as like a last resort, if there's no kosher food available, he could just eat those. And for a lot of it, he was just eating those. Like he had a bunch of cereal bars for lunch on the first day. We went out to like a kosher restaurant, I think on the final night or something. But yeah, it's just really hard. I thought we have it bad with the whole halal food thing. This is another level. So that was interesting. But so that was one interesting kind of social interaction from Berlin. The other one was one of my friends from my North Korea trip that I did almost 2 years ago now. She happened to be in Berlin. Hey, very good. She happened to be in Berlin that week as well. And so we met up, I think on like Tuesday night or something. And we sort of went to one of these Christmas markets. It's I think one of these German, it's a bit like Winter Wonderland, but less trashy.
Okay, fine. I've never been to Winter Wonderland, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Winter Wonderland. But essentially like the stalls for food and drink, and there's like a Ferris wheel, and there's like an ice rink. So
okay. That sort of stuff. Yeah.
That sort of stuff. So that was sort of more of a one-on-one interaction, kind of catching up with someone who we probably last saw each other about a year ago or something. So that was just, I feel like I've had a very nice varied week of social interactions on different like group sizes and stuff. It's been really enriching.
Do you feel like this would be a formula for like a long-term formula, like trying to actively arrange different social interactions of different group sizes in the evenings, for example?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's worth bearing in mind because like it is a completely different vibe, and like different things come up, and you talk about different kinds of things, and you kind of you fundamentally you connect in different ways, and I think that's valuable. Like, yeah, and so this week it was cool because I had like one-on-one, three-person dinner, and then like 10-person thing, and it was all really nice.
Oh, that's really nice to hear.
Yeah, and so related to this, the topic I wanted to discuss this week, I feel like we've been talking about that stuff for a while. Is it actually recording? Can we just make sure of that?
We are recording, I think, and it's been about 18 minutes of
nice
chatter, which is kind of odd because like a lot of the advice about podcasting on the internet is like, we get it, don't be straight white guys preambling for ages.
Yeah.
And like actually get into the meat of the topic. But oh well, it's fine.
I feel like this podcast is really just preamble. There is just preamble. I don't know.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. Which tweet storm are we discussing this week?
Nah. We had some feedback about the tweet storm.
Oh, we did.
Some people, it got me off. Some people seem to like it. So maybe we can use that as a format.
Okay.
Anyway, the thing I wanted to discuss this week and something I've been thinking about is sort of the etiquette and the way of thinking about messaging people.
Oh,
mate.
So
I think for the past year or so, I have been awful at messaging. And I was trying to figure out why last night. On the way to this social gathering, I was trying to figure out why.
Why am I bad at messaging?
And by bad at messaging, I mean, I think I'm bad at messaging in certain contexts. And so, for example, by messaging, I mean like messaging online, so Messenger, WhatsApp, whatever. I think with close friends and with group chats, I'm pretty good and pretty responsive and pretty active. I'm always like sending memes in various group chats that we're both part of. Most people don't really appreciate them enough, I think. But I keep that up fairly easily. And in like one-on-one sort of DMs with close friends or people I know quite well, it's fine as well. And whenever for example, whenever I'm sending a meme in one of the group chats, or whenever I'm like posting something on Twitter, I always think, man, there's like 5 people I haven't responded to on WhatsApp. Like, why am I posting another meme that's going to go unappreciated in this group chat instead of responding to those people? And I think the difference comes down to the fact that, okay, let's just talk about close friends to start off with. I think with close friends, there's a mutual understanding of the way you message each other. There's a mutual understanding of like, how what your messaging relationship is like. And so I have close friends with whom it's like, we only really DM each other to arrange to meet up or something, or if there's like a question, and it's very easy because it's usually like a one-line response. You don't have to think about it. With other people, it's more of a long form thing where like, we're close friends or whatever, and we'll like message each other a bunch of paragraphs, and then there's like no time pressure for the other person to reply, and then the other person will reply with a bunch of paragraphs, and it's fine. Like there's a mutual understanding of like, that's how we message. But I think with people I know less well, like people I've like recently met or something, or don't really know as well, if they message me, then I think I find it very mentally and emotionally taxing because there's no mutual understanding. And so there's a lot to think about. There's like, okay, they messaged me this thing. I mean, ostensibly the thing is very easy to action, they send you something interesting to check out, or, ask you some question. And so like on the face of it, it's like, it's very easy to deal with. However, I think there's a lot more to think about, because it's like, if someone you recently met send you like an interesting thing, then it's like, oh, okay, I should actually put in the time to read this thing
and
write a
think about it, and then
actually think about it, write a response, and
which
then
by
like,
that point is so much mental overhead that you might as well just tweet that meme and then kind of, wipe when you're on the toilet, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's also like, it's the thing that really gets me is when I'm not sure if there's an expectation of like reciprocity in the moment. Like if someone asks me some question or whatever, and like we haven't caught up in a while, I'm like, it feels kind of rude to just answer the question and not be like,
how's things with you, BTW?
Like what's going on? We haven't hung out in a while or something, that kind of thing. And so there's just a lot to think about. And so when if I scroll through WhatsApp and I see a few of those kind of unresponded messages, just like, oh no. And then like the longer you wait, the like worse it becomes.
Yeah, like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I've just seen this.
Yeah, it's really bad, and I'm not sure what the best way to deal with it is, because I think the mental and emotional tax is valid. Like these are things you should think about, right? What do you think?
So I've thought about this a fair bit, and the interim conclusion I've come to is that I'm just generally a messaging minimalist. In that I feel like messaging outside of like a group chat where there's discussion going on amongst people that you don't see very often, like our school friends, for example.
Yeah.
Outside of that context, I tend to be sort of only messaging for the purposes of asking or answering questions or arranging physical meetups.
Yeah.
I don't have many friends who kind of fall outside of that category, except maybe, I've got a friend in Scotland, and occasionally he'll comment on the podcast and I'd send a paragraph in reply and, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But those, I can count those sorts of friends on one hand. Whereas I don't tend to meet a lot of people who we initiate this messaging sort of thing with.
Right.
So I don't know. My policy has always been messaging is a suboptimal form of communication.
Yeah.
And given that I like to think I have things to do with my time other than, talking to people in this suboptimal form, I would rather do those things rather than kind of go through the effort of having this one-on-one messaging relationship.
Yeah.
The thing I like about group chats is that it's a nice, it's sort of it's low commitment enough, but also high measure and high impact enough that it, like so like I think I've commented on this before. Like a lot of friendship groups that I'm part of have been formed by the mere fact that someone has set up a WhatsApp group.
Absolutely.
And then it's so easy to arrange meetups in that WhatsApp group because then there's no emotional overhead of like messaging individual people to invite them, and then they reply to different things, which is why I think kind of like small WhatsApp group sizes are ideal. So I think three-man WhatsApp groups are amazing. I think sort of 4 and 5 and 6-man is amazing. Kind of look any bigger than that and you start getting into, okay, like either we invite everyone in the group to this or only certain people, it starts to become a little bit more complicated. But yeah, to answer your direct question, ironically, I think I'm a minimalist on the messaging front, but I'm not sure to what extent I want to kind of change that.
Yeah. But do you not, like, for example, I'm sure there are people who you kind of see a few times a year or something, right? Maybe like you see once every couple of months.
Yeah.
And if one of them, like, you don't know each other super well, if one of them messages you and is like, just like, hey, how's it going or whatever, or like sends you something or like asks you something, do you not think like, maybe it's worth trying to properly connect here, or maybe they want to try and properly connect or anything like that? Like, are you not worried about it being a bit like rude or terse to just be like, just answer the question and call it a day?
I'm having a look through my WhatsApp chats to see if I have any recent examples of this particular thing. And I don't really it's just kind of scrolling through these WhatsApp chats. I really don't message people very much unless there is a kind of an actionable thing that needs doing, or unless, for example, if I had a friend who was in a recent breakup, then I'd be like, all right, let's put the time and effort into talking about this.
Let's go out, baby.
Yeah. But outside of that, but I feel like you probably come across far more new people in your life than I do. Like, I have the same people I work with for like a year at a time, given that I work in a hospital and, things change on the year every year. And then outside of that, I have the people that I see at home and on weekends, which is pretty much you, Mimi, and a few friends in real life. And then occasionally I'd meet up with like a random school friend once every few months. I don't really expose myself to that many new people to be able to form these sorts of relationships. And to the extent that I have done, it's been mostly a case of answering the question and then arranging to meet up in person. Because I don't know, I struggle enough to reply to the people that I'm close to in real life and to keep up with kind of people I'm messaging on Hinge, for example, let alone trying to court friends who are already friends but not so close on the messaging. Like, I'm really not a fan of messaging courting. Yeah, and in fact, there is this one girl that I've been trying to arrange a meetup with via Hinge, who, she messages and then I reply like literally like 36 hours later. And then, I would reply something like, hey, do you want to go out for our afternoon tea tomorrow? And then she'd reply like a day later being like, oh, this has actually happened like today. She replied saying, sorry, I'm busy that day. By the way, I find your patchy texting to be very frustrating. I'm not a fan of last minute plans. Yeah. And I was like, look, man, sorry. If you want to message properly, then here's my number. Like, we can chat on WhatsApp or iMessage. Yeah. Because, the annoying thing about Hinge as well is that it's yet another app to keep track of the vast number of notifications that I clearly get on it. Yeah. So, when it's 15, 16 notifications, you just don't really know the difference. I don't know. Yeah. That's what I like. There's this hell yeah versus no thing that I've been kind of doing a lot recently, whereby unless I really, 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 really want to do something, then it's going to be a no. And the sorts of relationships that you're describing with people that you don't know very well, who are sort of maybe considering courting over Messenger, I think from my perspective, if I have no interest in getting to know that person better, then I will just kind of answer the question directly. Right. If I have some interest in getting to know them better, I'll answer the question directly and arrange a meetup. Be like, by the way, are you free at some point in the next few weeks? So we should grab dinner. Yeah. Otherwise, answer the direct question and leave it at that.
Yeah, I think that's just a much better way to do it. I think the other thing about just answering the question is like, it sort of sets the right precedent. So for example, with your Hinge girl, for example, like if you set the precedent of like, I'm going to reply 1 to 3 business days after you message me, then like equally in their head, it sort of sets that as well. Whereas if you set the precedent of like, we can just message like one-liners without thinking much about it, like really quickly, then that's the mode that they're going to operate into. And so like, it's almost like replying to sort of, it's like email conversations, right? Like if you get an email and you reply instantly with a short reply, chances are they will reply instantly with a short reply, and you can actually get a lot done in a very short period of time. However, if you get an email, you wait like 2 days to reply, you write some like long ass thing, then in their head, it's going to be like, oh, okay, this is, for this other person, this is like a 2-day priority thing for them. And so I will also put it lower down on my priority list, and I will take up to 2 days to reply. Not because you're playing any kind of BS games around playing hard to get or whatever, just because, people have priorities, and like it kind of makes sense to think about it that way. So I think
this is exactly what Tim Ferriss does, but like actively. So he talks about how when he replies to emails, he will often use the Boomerang Gmail extension to schedule the reply for a week's time or 2 weeks time or even months time, because often, like, I don't know if this is the case with you, but like if I get an email from like someone who watches my videos or something, I don't want to say fan because fan sounds weird.
It does.
If I get an email from someone who watches my videos or reads my email newsletter, if I see the notification, I read the first few lines and I'm free at that moment, then I will immediately reply to it.
Okay.
And what I don't want is for them to then get the idea that this becomes a sort of direct messaging, instant messenger type conversation where I will then immediately reply to any of their emails. You don't want
that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's putting too much of an expectation on, as in it's giving them too much like false expectations, because realistically I won't be able to reply to the next thing because I'll likely be doing something. And our mutual Twitter follower, James Clear, tweeted about this. He said, lol, if you email me, I'll either reply in 3 seconds or in 3 months. And I was like, oh my God, that's so true.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to be said for setting the expectations about this sort of thing.
Okay.
But it sounds like the way you're doing it is kind of based on the other person, as opposed to just based on a blanket policy that you have to be a messaging minimalist.
Yeah, and I think having that policy might actually be better, because like if I scroll through my, and look, I don't want this to be interpreted as me trying to signal like, oh, look how many people
I've got messaging me. Yeah. It's all right. I'll probably win that one.
It's not that, but like, just looking, if I scroll back through like WhatsApp, there are lots of people who I've met over the past, few months or whatever, and I like them and stuff, and it would be nice to kind of become friends, but
it's not a priority right now.
Well, it's not a priority, but like, the other thing is, I just waste so much time. It's not like, and this thought like permeates everything I do, where like, if I was operating at maximum efficiency, and I was like, look, man, I've got my priority list, I've got my company, I've got, my friends.
I was asleep every night, I go to the gym for 2 hours a day.
If I lived my life like that, I could perhaps forgive myself for like, being a bit bad at replying to stuff. The fact of the matter is, I continue to waste
many hours.
Many hours a day. Watching freaking YouTube.
Watching David Dobrik on YouTube.
Mate.
Alongside finding a meme on Twitter, sending it to 8 different group chats as if it's original content.
I'm not operating at any reasonable level of efficiency. And so I feel like it's just bad. Yeah, just bad use of time by me to like not just reply to it.
Okay, no, but I think
I'm just like chickening out of the kind of mental work that I need to do.
But like the obvious solution here is, or rather the obvious answer here is surely that it's just not a priority for you. Like, my whole philosophy about time management is that at any given moment we are doing what we most want to be doing.
Yeah.
If someone offered you £1 million every time you reply to someone on WhatsApp, you would jolly well, find the time to reply to people on WhatsApp. But it's just not enough of a priority. Whereas, if some girl that you were sort of really into was messaging you on WhatsApp, you'd make the time to reply, probably, unless you were playing some sort of BS game about it, kind of waiting twice as long as she waited for the last one.
Okay.
So I think if you were to run the thought experiment that, if this were, someone that you were interested in romantically, would you reply? Yeah, you would. Okay, therefore your priorities for this sort of person are lower. And that's absolutely fine. Like, you don't have to feel like your life has to be 100% efficient, like efficiently making use of every moment in order to have a reasonable priority ladder about different people and different events.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. But I know what you're saying about the whole, like, at any point in time you're doing the thing that is actually your biggest priority. I think what that doesn't account for is the fact that your sort of short-term desires are very different to your long-term desires. And so it is, it's possible to say that, like, yeah, I wish instead of watching David Dobrik vlogs while I'm doing a poo, I replied to messages.
Okay, but do you actually wish that?
Sorry?
Do you actually wish that? Because if you actually wished it, there's lots of things you can do to make it happen.
Yeah, and I know all the things.
And I feel like you don't actually wish it. Because if you did, you'd make it happen. If I actually wished to have a six pack, I'd be going to the gym more often. But I just don't really.
I also don't really like that
enough.
because, like, look, I've thought about this kind of dilemma for a while. And look, for example, it is reasonable for someone to say, "I want to be in better shape." You can be sitting at home, eating poorly, not going to the gym, and you could also say, "I want to be in better shape." And all of those things are consistent with one another. It is possible. It is
possible to want something without acting on it.
Yes.
Okay.
Basically.
So you're saying you actually want to message people?
Yeah, I'm all about the human connection
and build these relationships rather than watching David Dobrik vlogs on the toilet.
Yes.
So, for example, why not do the classic thing of deleting YouTube and aligning your chakras that way?
I've done that.
Why not do the classic thing of installing some kind of VPN on your browser that blocks David Dobrik vlogs on YouTube? Some kind of parental controls on the home Wi-Fi that blocks the word David and Dobrik in the same sentence.
Yeah, the thing is, there are obvious things to be done.
There are, and I think another obvious thing is to as we discussed a few weeks ago, kind of setting up this personal CRM whereby you're kind of keeping track of these relationships and figuring out who you can, like more treating your personal life like a business.
Yeah.
If this was your business, you certainly wouldn't be sort of, on the payroll and watching David Dobrik vlogs while you're supposed to be collaborating with some Jewish researcher in Brazil. Berlin, rather, not Brazil.
Yeah. I guess I just need to swear, but I do like the idea of just like having a personal policy of being a messaging minimalist and accepting whatever comes with that. That like, yeah, I'm sure there are people who I won't end up connecting deeply with because of that, and that's just how it has to be.
Or I mean, you could. One thing that I really want to implement at some point when I'm kind of out of a full-time job is this idea of never dining alone.
Yeah, I've heard about this.
Which is like a big thing. So I think it would be very feasible to, practically every day of the week, go out for dinner with a group of people or a different person, or, just like do something to get the social interaction. And when you have that many kind of free blocks in your calendar to hang out with people, at that point you can decide, you know what, I'm going to be messaging minimalist. I don't really like having long ass conversations by messenger unless we have to, or unless it directly fulfills a purpose. But I will be like, hey, do you want to catch up next Tuesday? I mean, it's 7 p.m. I'm free.
Yeah.
And I think sort of hangouts in person are always better than hangouts over messenger.
Absolutely, yeah.
Apart from, I suppose, in the teenage years where you're sort of messaging someone until 4 a.m. But I think about...
Who were you messaging until 4 a.m. in your teenager?
It was more like kind of like first, second year of university years.
Okay.
I didn't have any kind of female friends in my teenage years, of course. Although even then, when MSN Messenger was a thing, you would have the right sort of conversation with like James Choi or something. You'd be chatting about it until like kind of fully breaking down why it is that girl is really pretty and the other one isn't interested in you or something like that. And sort of formulating all the theories around it until literally 4:30 in the morning. You're like, right, we'll talk about this more in school in the next 5 hours. Or, talking about your latest business venture and how it's going to change the world and how you're going to train teenage special agents to do lockpicking and hacking. All the stuff that one does as a teenager.
Yeah.
I think outside of that, which isn't really a thing when you're an adult, I would think for most people, at least it's certainly not for me. When you start valuing sleep and getting up early in the morning to go to work and all that.
Yeah.
I think there's so little value in having a messaging relationship with someone compared to doing it in real life. And there's so much more you could be doing with your time. That is sort of my rationale for being a messaging minimalist.
Yeah.
And I have like zero qualms about that.
Yeah, I back it. Okay. Yeah, I think I know what needs to be done about the messaging thing.
What's that?
I think just becoming a messaging minimalist and just like replying quickly to people and without thinking about it, even if sometimes it might come across as like, cold or whatever.
Oh man, right. I've got the WhatsApp message that encapsulates this perfectly.
Yeah.
This is a message from one of my medic friends from 24th of October 2019.
Okay.
And he's talking about he's also talking about a business thing, like we're working on this project together and we need to submit it to some medical journal to get accepted.
Okay.
And I'm like, all right, cool, let's do it. And then his next thing is smiley face. How's everything going on PsychMate?
Oh.
And I just left that on unread. I probably saw the notification at the time.
Yeah.
It would have been so much effort to do the whole.
Yeah.
Oh, things are going great. So like something. What about you? What placement are you on? And it creates this sort of artificial conversation. Whereas I like this guy and everything, and we like have a have great chats when we hang out, but I have no interest in having a messaging relationship with him.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm just going to leave that. And he's not listening to this, but if he is, that's fine. Whatever. I'm so sorry about it if that's you. But I like hanging out with him in real life, but I don't want to have a messenger relationship.
Tell me what would be really funny. It would be really funny if he felt obliged to send that "how's it going" message, because he felt like if you just, if he only messages you when it's like business, then it's kind of rude or something. He was like, I'd better ask him how things are going. And then he types out, "How's it going on site, mate?"
That actually would be really funny. I'm going to ask him next time I see him.
Oh, that would be classic. One of the funniest things is when two people get caught in a dance that neither of them wants to be in. I just love it when that happens.
Oh God. Hey, hope you're doing well, or hi, how's everything going, by the way? That's like a classic, absolute classic. I sometimes do the how's everything going, by the way, if I'm actually curious about it.
Yeah.
If it's someone that I actually am close friends with, and we just happen to have messaged because, she or he has replied to my Instagram story or something, be like, oh, by the way, long time no see, what's been going on?
Yeah.
I always feel that this is always suboptimal. And so like at some point a few months ago, I tried to do this thing where I would have phone calls with people to and from work.
Yeah.
That didn't really materialize too well because, to be honest, I just didn't really put the effort into it. But
Yeah.
I would love for there to be kind of in my Calendly this 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. block every morning where I can just kind of have a phone call with someone to catch up.
Yeah.
And that would be totally normal and non-weird.
Yeah.
I would love for that to be the case.
Yeah, I think we talked about the phone call thing in previous episodes. Anyway, let's move away from messaging slightly and start to wrap things up. There was a thing that you said a few weeks ago on the podcast, which
It was deeply problematic.
No, it was good. It was the opposite.
wow.
It was actually good, and I think back to it.
Oh, man.
And look, I don't want to give you too much credit here. You're not the first person to have said this thing. It was something along the lines of like, I think you were doing a spiel about how you want to notice the nice things in life more, and like I think you said that if you're having a nice barbecue with your friends or something, it's worth just taking a moment to think that this is it, man. This is as good as it gets. And this whole like this is as good as it gets. This is something I'm thinking about a lot because for example, yesterday when the vibes were good and the sort of after party vibes at this dessert place, and we were all hanging out, and I was having a great time, and I did think to myself, this is actually it. This is the pinnacle. This is as good as life gets. There is nothing more to seek outside of this, and there's something really nice about that. Like that, they're really I feel like the default mode of operation is that like you're sort of seeking something, you're striving for something, and whatever you do, you're like striving to like get to the next thing or whatever. And actually like I genuinely think that like having fun with your friends it really is as good as it gets, and it's nice that anyone can experience that. And like the striving is just pointless. it's like fine, whatever, you strive for this other stuff because maybe it's interesting or something, but when you're hanging out with your friends and you're having a good time, that is it. That is the pinnacle, and everyone can have that, and lots of people do have that.
Yeah, no, I had a very similar thing, kind of thought process. I think I might have mentioned this at some point. Oh well, on this holiday recently in Spain that I went to with some of my medic friends.
Yeah,
and there was it was sort of towards the end of the night. We were all kind of having a group DMC, a deep meaningful conversation, at about 2 a.m, and we were all like, all right, we should probably go to bed now.
Yeah,
and I was just kind of thinking that this is actually so nice.
Yeah,
and so I kind of put myself out there. I was like, guys, this is going to sound really moist, but I just want to say that this evening has been absolutely wonderful, and I've had a great time, and I love you all.
Yeah,
and like that's fine. I just had to kind of get all of that out because I was like, oh my god, I feel like such a wet wipe.
Yeah,
like talking about this, but I think kind of stating that and sort of taking that embarrassment on ourselves to actually put ourselves out there to state that fact is like does add something to the group dynamic. And everyone's like, oh yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, and
it takes that one person to be okay with voicing what hopefully a lot of people are thinking.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you had that thought process of saying it.
I didn't think to say it, but that's actually, I think that's actually really nice, and I should say that more often. But yeah, it's comforting to know that life actually does not get better than that.
So this is something I've been thinking about a lot in the last 2 weeks because the whole end of year coming up and doing like an annual review and stuff like that. A lot of the productivity pros would be like, you've got to do your annual review every year because you can set your goals and blah blah blah. And I'm very uneasy about this whole goal setting thing because I feel, especially when it comes to setting numerical goals, which is almost by definition what you're supposed to do with the whole SMART goals that you've come across, specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, timely, etc. And I've got some friends who are into the whole business thing who've sort of been acting as mentors, as it were, for my YouTube channel and kind of business growth, and saying that, what are your subscriber milestones that you want to hit next year? And I'm like, oh, I really don't want to think in that way at all because, it's just so good right now. Like, it's grown and been successful beyond my wildest dreams. And it's just great. Like, what I have is more than enough. And to actively set a goal to strive for more, I can see why that would be valuable, because it sort of sets a direction, keeps you moving along.
Yeah.
But I rebel a lot against even having that thought process. And I think that might be... I'm tempted to say that a big part of my kind of recipe for kind of being generally content and being happy is not thinking about numerical goals in that sense.
Yeah.
And not thinking that, okay, once I get to this milestone, then I'll be happy, or even that milestone should be a thing.
Yeah, I guess I back that. I guess your situation is a bit unusual in that you kind of have the day job and then you're kind of doing the YouTube thing on the side. And so... And it's sort of just kind of working, so you actually don't really need to think too much about it. And like, you don't have any responsibility or anything, right? Like, it's completely just up to you. You're basically doing this for yourself, solo. I think it's different. For example, if there are people depending on someone, if you have a family, if you have employees, if you have investors and things like that, there is more of a responsibility towards having targets and reaching those targets and things.
I don't know, is there? Because the guys who run Basecamp, for example, that's this, as you know, this like 51 person software company, their whole thing is the kind of also rebelling against this goal orientated mindset, saying that, look, the only goal is to be profitable, i.e. not lose money, and to have happy customers and happy employees.
Right, yeah. And they're doing fine because they're profitable and they're not a big company and they don't want to become a big company. So they're doing fine. Like, their employees are getting paid every month. Everyone's happy. If it's a company, early stage startup, maybe a bit like Causal, where,
you want to become $1 billion company.
Well, I don't know. That'd be nice, but also the alternative is nice too. But for example, next year we're probably going to hire some people. We're not profitable. Then there actually is a responsibility of, okay, we've told these people, come work for us. We'll pay you money. This is going to be a good thing that we're doing here. There is some responsibility towards making something happen there, right? And like, even though legally our investors can't make us do anything, there is like I think a moral responsibility of like, we've talked to these people.
Yeah, man, you're right. I've put money into this company, or rather I will at some point.
Wait, I haven't seen a penny of that yet, mate. You keep telling me, next month, I'm good for it, man. I'm good for the money.
I'm not very liquid right now. This is the problem. Yeah. I will transfer the money at some point.
But yeah, I think you're in a unfortunate position in that there literally is no responsibility to anyone, and that's great. I think other people are in positions where there are responsibilities, and that's where the whole milestone-y kind of stuff comes in handy. I kind of see the whole realm of I feel like the striving realm of like, I guess providing economic value in some way. I just see that as like a way to pass the time. Like, you can't spend all day having dinner, having dessert with your friends. Like, that actually wouldn't be fun. You have to find something to pass like 80% of the time, so that you can enjoy the 20% of the time where where there's no striving required, because that is already the pinnacle, which is just hanging out with other people.
Yeah.
And if you actually enjoy the 80% of passing the time, even better.
Then you're even a higher pinnacle.
Well, not a higher pinnacle, but that's I just see the striving thing as like, I think it's fine to strive. It keeps things interesting. It passes the time, But there is something comforting about knowing that there is no higher mountain to be reached or anything like
than having dessert with your mates.
Yeah, you have experienced the
pinnacle of human
like pleasure,
pinnacle of the human existence.
Yeah.
Of the what's the tagline? Oh, human condition. Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And in a way, that's sort of like that sort of old adage that now gets scoffed on by the tech community, the tech bros, which is, work hard in the 9 to 5 so you can enjoy the 5 to 9. And
who says that?
That's like a thing. It's like a thing that encourages people who don't enjoy their jobs to, just kind of grit and bear it, because you're working in order to live.
Okay, yeah.
And obviously all the tech bros dunk on this because, obviously that's suboptimal. You want to enjoy the 9 to 5 as well.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be doing the 9 to 5 purely so you can live the 5 to 9. But, I think there is some kind of truth in that.
Yeah, mate.
But obviously it's a more optimal kind of life if you can enjoy all of it, rather than feeling that you have to suffer through 8 hours of the day in order to enjoy 4 hours of the day.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that's a good place to end this. So any insights of the week apart from all the things we've already discussed?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I have any particular insights. Just the stuff we've kind of discussed. And yeah, I think the thing we talked about having like varied social interactions is good. So for example, we're about to go and hang out with our cousins in Birmingham for like a sleepover kind of thing. And again, that's a very different vibe to like having dinner and stuff like that. and it's all nice and it's all great.
There was an insight that I came across this week. Oh, was it this week? Was it last week? Doesn't matter. It was the Farnham Street podcast episode where he was talking with that
Esther,
sex therapist or relationship therapist, or
there was a sex therapist one a few months ago. There was a one recently with Esther something.
Oh yeah, who deals with like relationship counseling or marriage counseling.
Yeah.
So there was there was like a throwaway thing that she said that I'd never quite appreciated before, and I've been thinking a lot from my armchair about this whole idea of marriage. And people say that when you get married, then the sex life sort of goes out the window after a while.
Okay.
Because you kind of get into running the small business of raising kids and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of the stuff that I've read about this thing, as an armchair expert on the topic, has been about trying to avoid this sort of trying to keep the passion going, as it were, but also recognizing that actually, it's inevitably going to fade. So don't worry about it. Don't abandon a relationship just because the spark isn't quite there. But what this Esther person said in this podcast is that, like, I think the question that Shane Parrish asked was, is that his name? Shane
Yes.
Parrish. I think the question that Shane Parrish asked was something like, how do you maintain an active sex life during marriage or during like a very long term relationship?
Okay.
And Esther said that, look, man, let's imagine you're having a meal. One way of doing it is kind of like taking the time to set the table nicely, to prepare the food, to kind of like put the effort into making it a nice kind of experience. Then you have the meal and you have some good wine or some like tea that matches to go with it. And that's a very different sort of experience. So imagine that on the one hand, and on the other hand, imagine chopping a tomato.
Okay.
And she was saying that sex is sort of like, it can be like chopping a tomato in that it's purely, it can just be the physical action of chopping the tomato.
Right.
But actually, there is a whole different realm of it, which is kind of the experience design, where you have like a nice bedroom and you kind of set the mood and this and that. And it becomes like arranging a nice meal.
Okay.
And I'd never quite appreciated that sort of analogy before, that you can sort of manufacture these sorts of environments to help get the outcome that you want versus just kind of doing the thing.
Wait. How abstract are we talking here? Like, is the meal the wider project of marriage, or is the meal still the sort of the sexual aspect, the sexual aspect of marriage, and the tomato is like,
all right.
How abstract are we talking here?
We're going to take the explicit content thing. Basically, the tomato bit is the physical act of having sex.
Okay.
And the creating a nice experience around it is like, making sure the bedroom is clean, like sort of turning it into a sort of a more kind of designed experience.
Okay, sure.
Rather than, we're just going to get into our dirty bedroom, we're just going to kind of do the business, and then we're going to
do the deed.
We're going to roll over and fall asleep.
Right.
So that's what she meant by that. And so that was one point that I hadn't quite thought about. I was like, oh, okay, those are two very, very different things, although just kind of in my head, I hadn't really considered that. Secondly, there was an episode of the Tim Ferriss Show where he was interviewing Gary Keller, who is like this old business coach type of guy who wrote this book called The One Thing, which is all about kind of finding the one thing in life that you can do. And the question that he advocates we ask every day is, what's the one thing I can do that will make everything else on my to-do list either irrelevant or much easier?
Yeah.
And what Gary was saying in this episode is that you should think about this one thing idea in different sort of contexts. Like, what's the one thing I can do to improve my relationship with my mum? And he gives the example of how his mum really likes basketball, so he bought her every year buys her the ESPN basketball subscription, and now they watch basketball together, and that was a single thing that markedly improved their relationship.
Yeah.
But he also talks a lot about kind of environment design, and this is something that I don't think about enough. And the quote, the thing that Tim Ferriss said was like, yeah, there's no point being the best captain in the rough seas that you've created for yourself.
Yeah.
And that got me thinking about this sort of linked to what Esther was saying about tidying your room. Sort of what Jordan Peterson says about
classic
tidying your room. That was like, damn, there is actually so much value in sort of having like a decent environment. And when I kind of stumbled across these two podcasts just coincidentally in succession, I started to realize just how much environmental design plays in my own productivity and getting stuff done. Like when my desk is clean and the living room is nice, it just feels so much more better to get stuff done. And when I go to the gym that has a nice cafe, it just feels so much better.
Yeah.
Whereas, normally I live with camera gear out, this and that, like, mugs on the desk, and in the short term it feels like it's not doing anything, but actually there's so much long-term value in cleaning your room.
Yeah, I think aesthetics matter. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that was my insight for the week.
Alrighty.
Oh, should we end by reading a review?
Sure.
For some reason, we only seem to have 36 ratings on Apple Podcasts. So guys, if you're watching this, please...
That's not true.
Oh, maybe it's... Oh, you can change your...
Dude, okay, All right, this is going to be boring for the listeners. Go on chartable.com.
Yeah.
Log in there.
Dashboard.
That aggregates everything. If you go on the reviews section, you can see the total number of ratings we've had. You can see every single review. So you can see, this is all the numbers.
Oh, nice. Okay. So we've got 178 reviews and 999 ratings.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
999.
Have you rated the podcast yet?
I don't think I have.
Okay, rate the podcast.
I don't know how to rate podcasts.
Mate, go go on the podcast app that's built into your iPhone and rate it there. Anyway, here's one from Nuk, who is from Singapore, posted on the 14th of December. I thoroughly enjoy Ali's content and was directed here as I view his YouTube channel regularly. Ugh. The podcast is extremely entertaining. I usually only listen to podcasts while commuting. However, this podcast is so good that I would intentionally plan long walks and commutes to consume more of it. Thanks for the great content. Many themes discussed are very relevant pertaining to the human condition, which actually do sound really pretentious. However, I assure you that they dish out valuable insights at crazy rates. Additionally, you know these discussions are genuine and well thought out with the intent to help others. This podcast has certainly enriched my life. Oh, thank you very much. Nuk13438288181 via Apple Podcasts from Singapore.
That is very nice to hear and a lovely note to end on. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.